Subscribe to Dr. Nightmare Channel now.
The Hollow Children. When I was a kid, I never liked walking home from school alone. I grew up in a small neighborhood, nothing special, just a row of houses lined along carked sidewalks with maple trees that grew crooked over the years. Everyone knew each other, and people said it was a safe place. But even when I was young, I felt like something about that town wasn't right. I was 9 years old when I first started noticing the old orphanage on the corner of Pine Street. It was a 3-story building with boarded windows and bricks that had turned black from years of weather. The kids in the neighborhood called it the Hollow House. We dared each other to ride our bikes past it, but no one ever went inside. Parents said it was condemned, dangerous, and not to play near it. But it had this way of pulling at your eyes when you walked by, like it wanted you to look, wanted you to notice that it was still there. The first time I heard the voices, I thought it was just kids playing in the yard next to it. I was walking home from school, backpack heavy on my shoulders, when I heard laughter. It wasn't the normal kind of laughter kids make when they're chasing each other. It was thin, stretched, almost like it was leaking through the walls. I stopped at the corner and looked at the broken windows. They were covered in dirt and dust, but I swear I saw movement behind the glass. I told myself it was nothing, but the sound followed me the whole walk home. Faint giggles, whispers, like children sharing secrets in the dark. That night, when I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars on my ceiling and listened to the creaks of the house. But then I heard something else. A faint knock, steady and soft, as if someone was tapping from inside my closet. I froze, pulling the blanket up to my chin. The knocking stopped after a few minutes, but I didn't sleep until morning. When I finally got up, I checked the closet. Nothing, just clothes and shoes. I told myself it was a dream. A few days later, my friend Mark dared me to walk up to the Hollow House. We were riding our bikes near the corner when he stopped and smirked at me. He said I was too scared to get close. I didn't want him to think I was a coward, so I dropped my bike and walked toward the front gate. The iron bars were rusted, bent in places, and a broken chain dangled uselessly. The front yard was overgrown with weeds, tall grass brushing against my legs. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. It wasn't windy, but the shade around the house made it colder than the street behind me. I reached the front steps and put my hand on the rotting wood of the door. The moment my fingers touched it, I heard children laughing again, this time right behind the door. I spun around, but the street was empty. Mark was shouting at me from the sidewalk, asking if I was chicken. I didn't answer. I just ran back, heart racing. That night, I had the first dream. I was standing inside the orphanage, the air heavy and damp, like the whole building had been soaked in rainwater. Long hallways stretched in every direction, lined with doors. I could hear children laughing and running, but I never saw them. I walked through the halls until I found a playroom filled with broken toys. Wooden blocks scattered across the floor, a doll missing its head, a jump rope lying in a knot. The walls were covered in drawings, stick figures, houses, suns, all done in faded crayon. But the faces of the children in those drawings had been scratched out. I woke up sweating, my sheets twisted around me. I didn't tell anyone about the dream, not even Mark, but I knew it wasn't just a dream. It felt too real. The next week on my way home, I saw something that made my stomach drop. One of the boards over the second floor window was gone, just missing, like someone had pried it off. Behind the glass, I saw a small hand press against it. Pale, thin, too small to be an adult's, and then it slid away, leaving a smear across the dusty window. I ran the whole way home. Over the following days, things got worse. My little sister Emily started waking up crying, saying she heard kids whispering in her room at night. She was only 5, and my mom brushed it off as nightmares, but I knew it wasn't just dreams. One night, she pointed at the corner of her room and told me a boy had been standing there. She said he wanted her to come play with him. I didn't know what to say. I just hugged her until she fell asleep. I started noticing scratches on the wood floor near my bed. Long, thin scratches, like something had been dragged across it. At first, I thought it was me moving furniture without realizing it, but the marks kept appearing, fresh and sharp. One morning, I woke up to find my toy chest open, toys scattered on the floor. My mom yelled at me for being messy, but I swore I hadn't touched it. The hollow house seemed to bleed into my life more every day. I'd walk home and hear footsteps behind me, but when I turned, the sidewalk was empty. Sometimes I'd hear giggling right in my ear, so close it made my hairs on the neck stand up. At night, the knocking on my closet grew louder, turning into scratching, as if something was trapped inside trying to claw its way out. The scariest night came in late autumn. The wind was sharp, rattling the windows, and the moonlight cast long shadows across my room. I woke up to the sound of children singing. Their voices were soft, in unison, carrying a tune I didn't recognize. I sat up in bed, heart hammering, and realized the sound was coming from the hallway outside my room. I slid out of bed and crept to the door, opening it just a crack. The hallway was dark, but I could see movement, small shapes, silhouettes of children running and playing. Their laughter echoed off the walls. I blinked, and they were gone. Just the empty hall stretching toward my sister's room. I rushed to check on Emily. She was asleep, breathing softly, but her closet door was wide open, and inside, I thought I saw something move. I shut the door quickly and whispered a prayer I barely remembered from church. The next day, I told my mom everything. She didn't believe me. She said old houses creak and kids imagine things. But that same night, she came into my room, pale and shaking. She said she woke up and saw a child standing at the foot of her bed. She thought it was Emily at first, but when she reached out, the figure vanished. After that, she lit candles in every room and whispered prayers under her breath. For a while, the house was quiet, but the silence didn't last. One evening, I was sitting in the living room doing homework when I heard a loud slam upstairs. It was my toy chest again. I crept up the stairs and found my room in disarray, toys scattered, closet open, scratches fresh on the floor. But what made my blood freeze was the sound of giggling coming from inside the toy chest. I ran out of the room and didn't go back until my mom came home. When I told her, she looked more afraid than I'd ever seen her. She admitted something she had kept from us. She said when she was young, the orphanage had been shut down because of a fire. Dozens of children had died inside. Their bodies were never properly buried. People believed their spirits still wandered the place. We moved out of that house a few months later, but the memories never left me. Even now, as an adult, I sometimes wake in the middle of the night and hear faint giggling in the dark. Sometimes I hear the sound of small hands knocking on the closet door. I try to tell myself it's just my imagination, just childhood fears clinging to me. But deep down, I know the truth. The hollow house never let go. The children inside never stopped playing. And once they've chosen you, they never leave you alone. Even now, when the night is quiet and the air feels too still, I can hear them whispering, laughing, waiting for me to play again.
The House That Remembers. When I was 10 years old, my family moved out of the small town where I grew up and into the countryside. My mom had remarried, and my stepfather wanted us to have more space, more quiet, more of what he called a real home. He found an old farmhouse about 20 minutes outside of town. It sat on a sloping hill surrounded by fields that stretched for miles. At first glance, it looked almost perfect. A wide front porch, tall windows, and a red barn leaning slightly to one side. My mom fell in love with it right away. She said it had character. I remember standing in the yard, staring at the peeling paint and sagging roofline, thinking it looked less like character and more like something tired. But when you're a kid, you don't have much of a choice. That night, we carried boxes into the house, and my stepdad declared that this place was going to be where we built new memories. I didn't know then how right he was. I just didn't realize the house had memories of its own. My bedroom was upstairs, at the far end of the hall. The walls were faded blue, with wallpaper peeling at the corners. The closet was unusually deep, so deep that my stepdad joked I could get lost in there. The window overlooked the back fields, where the grass bent in waves whenever the wind moved through. At night, the crickets sang so loud that I had to press a pillow over my ears to fall asleep. The first night in that room, I woke up to a sound I couldn't place. At first, I thought it was the house settling, the usual creaks and groans old houses make. But then I realized it was a voice. Faint, muffled, like it was coming from inside the walls. I sat up in bed, straining to hear, but it faded away before I could make out the words. I told myself it was just my imagination. The next day, when I mentioned it at breakfast, my mom brushed it off. She said old houses hold on to noises like echoes. She said it's probably the wind in the rafters, she told me. My stepdad laughed and said the place was bound to creak until he fixed it up. But my little brother, who was only 6, looked at me with wide eyes. He whispered, "I heard it too." That night, I paid closer attention. I lay awake staring at the cracks in the ceiling until the sound returned. A voice, clearer this time, whispering words I still couldn't understand. It came from the closet. I held my breath and listened. It almost sounded like a child humming a lullaby. I didn't open the closet. I couldn't. Instead, I hid under the covers until I fell asleep. Over the next week, more strange things happened. The kitchen chairs would be moved from where we left them. Footsteps padded across the upstairs hall at night, even when everyone was asleep. Once, I woke up to find the rocking chair in my room swaying back and forth, though the window was shut tight. My little brother, who was only 6, started talking about the other boy. He said the boy lived in the closet and liked to play at night. My mom dismissed it as make-believe, but I could see the fear in my brother's eyes. He would wake up crying, saying the boy didn't want him to leave. One evening, while exploring the barn, I found something strange. Behind a stack of old hay bales was a small wooden box. Inside were photographs, black and white, faded, the kind you'd expect to see in history books. They showed children standing in front of the house. None of them were smiling. Their eyes looked flat, empty, as if whatever joy they had was drained away before the camera snapped. On the back of one photo, in spidery handwriting, were the words, "The ones who stayed." I didn't tell my parents. I hid the box under my bed, but the faces haunted me. The dreams started soon after. I would dream of the house, but not as it was. In my dreams, it was alive, breathing faintly. The floorboards bent as though they were ribs expanding with every breath. And always, the children were there, standing in the hall, sitting on the stairs, watching me with blank faces. They never spoke, but when I woke up, I would hear faint knocking from inside the walls. One night during a thunderstorm, I woke to find my bedroom door wide open. I was certain I had shut it. The hallway light flickered, and in the moment between flashes, I saw them. 3 small figures standing at the end of the hall. Children, pale and thin, their eyes black as the storm outside. When the light flickered again, they were gone. I tried to tell my mom, but she looked exhausted, stressed from the move and my stepdad's long hours. She told me I was just having nightmares. My brother, though, confided in me. He said the boy from the closet told him things, secrets about the house, that it remembered everyone who lived there, that it never let them go. The scariest moment came about a month after we moved in. My brother and I were playing in the yard when we heard laughter drifting from the upstairs window, my window. We froze. Slowly we looked up, and for just a second I saw a child's face pressed against the glass, smiling, watching us. When I blinked, it was gone. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in my room. I begged my mom to let me sleep downstairs. She finally agreed. I curled up on the couch, relieved, but in the middle of the night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps coming down the stairs. Soft, slow, childlike. I held my breath, waiting to see my brother, but no one came. The footsteps stopped behind the couch. When I finally looked, no one was there. The next morning, I noticed something carved into the wood of the couch. Words, shallow but clear. "We are still here." After that, everything escalated. My toys began moving on their own. My brother's drawings showed children with hollow eyes. My mom started waking with bruises on her arms, though she said she must have bumped into something in the night. Even my stepdad, who never admitted to fear, began sleeping with the lights on. One evening, desperate for answers, I pulled the wooden box from under my bed and looked through the photographs again. That's when I found one I hadn't noticed before. It showed the house itself, long before we moved in. In the window of my room, faint and blurry, was the figure of a child. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The house wasn't just old, it was alive. It remembered. The final night we spent there is burned into my memory. A storm rolled over the fields, lightning flashing through the windows. My brother screamed from his room, and when I ran in, I saw him standing in the middle of the floor, surrounded by children. Pale, hollow-eyed children. They held his hands, pulling him toward the closet. I shouted, ran forward, tried to tear him away, but the children didn't move. Their eyes turned toward me all at once, black and endless. My brother screamed louder. My mom rushed in, and suddenly the children were gone. Just gone. My brother collapsed in her arms, sobbing. We left the house that night. My stepdad didn't argue. He drove us back into town and swore we would never go back. A few weeks later, we moved into a different home, smaller, safer. We never spoke of the farmhouse again. But I still dream of it. I dream of the walls breathing, of the children watching me. Sometimes in those dreams, they whisper to me. They tell me the house remembers, that one day it will call us back. And when I wake, I swear I can still hear the faint knocking, somewhere in the walls.
The passenger. I've never liked driving at night. There's something about the way the road disappears into darkness, the way the headlights catch just enough of the world to remind you of how much you can't see. When I was younger, I used to think of the night highways as empty veins, stretching on forever. No towns, no people, just the hum of tires on asphalt, and the sense that you were the only living soul for miles. One night, when I was 21, I found out I wasn't as alone as I thought. I had just finished visiting my mom for the weekend. She lived 2 hours away from where I was staying at the time, and I left later than I meant to. By the time I got on the highway, it was close to midnight. The road was quiet, the sky moonless, and the only light came from the narrow beams of my car. I turned the radio on low just to fill the silence. About 30 minutes into the drive, I saw him. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks. On the side of the road, just beyond the guardrail, was a figure, standing still. A man. He wasn't waving, wasn't walking, just standing there in the dark. My stomach tightened, and I gripped the wheel. I told myself not to slow down, not to stop. But as I passed, the beam of my headlights caught his face. He was pale, with dark circles under his eyes. He looked young, maybe my age, but something about him felt wrong. His expression wasn't desperate like most hitchhikers. It was calm, patient, like he'd been waiting for me. I drove another mile before my conscience got the better of me. I told myself he could be in trouble, that maybe he needed help. Against my better judgment, I turned around at the next exit. When I got back to the stretch of road where I'd seen him, he was still there, standing in the exact same spot. I slowed, rolled down the passenger window, and called out, "You need a ride?" He stepped closer, into the light. His clothes were outdated, a worn jacket, scuffed shoes, like something from decades earlier. He didn't answer right away, just looked at me with dark, unblinking eyes. Finally, he nodded. I unlocked the door. The moment he slid into the passenger seat, the air in the car changed. It felt heavier, colder, like someone had opened a window in the dead of winter. He didn't smell like sweat or dirt the way I expected. Instead, he smelled faintly of damp earth. "Where you headed?" I asked. He gave me a small smile. "Same direction as you." I didn't like that answer, but I forced a laugh. I told myself he was just awkward, maybe tired. I kept driving. For the first few miles, he didn't say much. He just stared out the windshield, hands resting on his knees. I tried small talk, asked if he'd been waiting long, where he was coming from. He didn't give real answers, just vague things like long enough or from around here. But then he said something that made my skin crawl. "You grew up on Birch Lane, right? The yellow house with the swing set in the yard?" My hands tightened on the wheel. I hadn't told him my name, let alone where I grew up. I asked how he knew that. He just smiled again, lips curling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "I remember things," he said. "I remember everyone." The way he said it, flat, certain, made my stomach twist. I wanted to pull over to tell him to get out, but the highway was dark and empty. Stopping felt more dangerous than driving. I told myself I'd take the next exit and drop him at a gas station. But before I could say anything else, he spoke again. "Your father used to work nights. You hated that. You thought the house felt different when he wasn't home." My mouth dried. That wasn't the kind of thing someone could guess. It was true. Memories I hadn't thought about in years came rushing back, vivid and sharp. I whispered, "Who are you?" He turned his head and looked at me, finally meeting my eyes. They were darker than before, almost black, and in them I saw something I can't explain. Not just recognition, but hunger. "You already know," he said. The rest of the drive blurred together. The radio fizzled with static no matter what station I tried. The air in the car grew colder, so cold I could see my breath. Every time I glanced at him, he seemed closer, though he never moved. I finally saw an exit up ahead. My heart pounded as I took it, pulling into a gas station lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. The place was empty, not even a clerk inside the glass booth. I put the car in park and told him this was as far as I could take him. He didn't move. He just sat there, staring straight ahead. I reached across to open his door, but the seat was empty. Just empty. I scrambled out of the car, my legs shaking, and looked around the lot. No sign of him, no footsteps, nothing. The passenger seat was cold to the touch, like ice. I drove the rest of the way at home with every light in the car on, whispering to myself that I was imagining it, that I was tired, that I must have dreamed the whole thing while driving. But when I pulled into my driveway, I saw something that still chills me. On the fogged window of the passenger seat, written in a finger trail, were the words, "Thanks for the ride." I've never picked up another hitchhiker. I can't even drive at night without glancing at the passenger seat, half expecting to see him sitting there, patient and pale, waiting for me to take him further down the road. And sometimes, when the highway is empty and the night feels too quiet, I swear I hear his voice beside me, whispering things I thought no one else could know.